And then in 2005, the 5th International Iron Conference was held at Ironbridge, and that became the kind of catalyst then for Carmarthen School of Art. I believe Coral Lambert delivered quite a kind of groundbreaking lecture that seemed to, I think, kind of ignite that spark then. And then leading on from that, back in 2006, that's where it all began, with Andy Griffiths kind of taking that lead and taking on that role as the previous head of sculpture. And that's when he introduced that then into the college and into the sculpture department, and that's where students then kind of were exposed to that material then. So my work is about gender, and it provokes the kind of empowerment of women. I'm interested in the role of women in sculpture, and that seems to have become a kind of focal point in my practice. And previous works over the last couple of years have primarily been with cast iron, using kind of domestic objects, and how they become subverted then with industrial materials then. So it becomes a very kind of repetitive, responsive action within those works. Alongside that then, within that practice, I've been looking and confronting then my kind of identity as a woman of dual ethnicity, Welsh and Lebanese, and my kind of journey to reconnect with cultural references from which I feel like I've been displaced. So there's almost kind of two strands to my practice, but I think the kind of core fundamental kind of catalyst is who I am and where I position myself as a woman, and my identity and as a woman in sculpture. So my studio practice, back in 2011, that's kind of where it all began. Me as a student, art student, on my foundation diploma, which then led me on into studying fine art sculpture. And that's kind of where I was exposed to a kind of array of processes and materials. And obviously that's where I fell in love with cast iron and hot metal casting. And then for those 3 years, I just found myself consistently exposed and working within that environment. There would be periods of times where I wouldn't have molds in the pours, but I would always be running furnaces and almost guiding people then within that environment. So it became a kind of natural, comfortable environment for me very quick and very early on then. That then led me on to an MFA in 2016. Very different way of studying. I didn't necessarily use casting as a kind of process or material then within my practice, and the work became a lot more organic, and I was exploring different forms and different ways of making then. However, I've always made myself be around that particular process then. So I still had connections with the college, and I was also still interested in attending conferences and trying to expose myself even more to that process, and also to meet new people within the iron community. And that kind of led me into, attending different conferences, and it led me back to the college when I then went on to study for my teacher training, which is my PGCE, back in 2019. So Andy Griffiths was then my mentor once again, as I was studying for that kind of year-long period of time within the college. So just a couple of images of my work over the years, and also just how different some of the works can be, but also there's almost a kind of thread within it, in terms of that kind of phallic kind of absurdity with it, within the forms, and I'm quite interested in objects then. They seem to kind of sometimes be quite a catalyst to my practice. And these have been created then over a period of 10 years then. So it's just a quick glance of the different works that I have exposed myself to within a sculptural performance-based and installation works then. So I kind of sit myself within a kind of multidisciplinary practice and not just primarily identify as a sculptor. So INR project was the first UK-based conference then in relation to introducing cast iron to new audiences, students and professional artists. And this was back in 2012 and 2014. And we were asked by James Hayes to go over to Cork Island, and this was in partnership with the National Sculpture Factory and Crawford College of Art. And we were almost going over as experts then. So we were kind of sitting alongside other professionals from America, such as Matt Toole and Rian Karan. So it felt quite strange as a student to be going over teaching, practicing artists a process then. So that was quite an interesting experience. And as a student, then I got the opportunity to go over there on both those occasions. So it was quite a special collaboration then between colleges and different countries. And again, that idea of sharing knowledge and continuing to build upon that kind of iron community, which I think is what is the kind of fundamental aspect then, the important side of what we do and sharing that knowledge with one another. So the 6th International Conference of Contemporary Cast Iron Art was held in Cadwelly Castle back in 2010. So Andy Griffiths was leading on this then at that point. So him and other kind of staff members and students at Carmarthen School of Art were running this conference. So again, it was, quite a significant happening then, that the fact that it could, come back to Wales. And I think that's something that is quite important to us, that we are a part of that community, but at the same time, we are the only art school in the UK that is continuing to keep this practice going then. And that in itself is quite incredibly special. So this was just a quick video that was done of the conference. And it was quite extraordinary at the time because I think they had nearly 200 attendees, and I know that there was a kind of global financial crisis going on at the time. So overall, it was an incredibly successful conference, also in an incredibly kind of beautiful rural location. So I know that was exciting for the college to be a part of, and it's something that we are, thinking about kind of continuing to progress and think about, in the near future. So the first annual Day of the Dead public iron pour, these became apparent back in 2006 at Carmarthen School of Art. It's now known as the Festival of Fire and Light, which is an annual iron pour and performance. It started off primarily as just a kind of production pour then for the public, so for people to kind of see and experience what was going on in relation to the casting then in the department and at the college. It then went from that production pour to purely a performance, and it became that kind of festival where other departments were engaging with different activities going on in their own environments. And then over the last couple of years, it has turned into a production pour that we then go into performance in the evening. So it's quite an intensive, long day. It also provides us with the opportunity to offer workshops to the public. So if they come in and make scratch molds, they can then see those molds being poured in front of them, and they can take them away then on the same day. So it's kind of become a spectacle then for the community and for the college. And again, it's something that we're very proud to be a part of, and something that we enjoy the fact that we can share that then with members of the public. And another thing that's kind of started to happen over the last 18 months due to the pandemic is that we have taken the plunge and also gone live with some of our pours, which naturally has reached a wider audience. So I had to find a way of allowing people to still see what we were doing, but on a completely different platform. So going live through our Facebook pages seemed the most kind of natural way of allowing people to see what we do. So going on from when, you know, the cast iron was originated at the college by Andy Griffiths, it was then celebrated, the 10th anniversary of cast iron was celebrated back in 2016. And that was done through an online talk and gallery talk by Andy Griffiths, and also a live exhibition of kind of previous cast iron works that had been created over those 10 years. So that was quite a special event and quite an achievement to see that happening then. And that was something that the college celebrated and the department celebrated. So there's a beautiful write-up of what Andy was talking about, his, you know, his previous experiences and what he'd been exposed to, and how he then came to bring that process to the college in a safe manner. And we are very lucky that we are still able to practice this process then in the college. What does it mean to be a woman working with iron? So I often think about this as a woman in sculpture, working within a kind of industrial environment, and this idea of collaboration and inclusivity and the role then that comes with that, especially now as I'm running the department. And I do feel like I have a certain role to play with that then, and I have a certain responsibility to ensure that people feel comfortable within that environment, you know, regardless of your background, shape, size, colour. It's incredibly important that people feel that they can give it a go and see if they feel kind of comfortable and something that they enjoy doing then. So that inclusivity is quite important to us. Especially over the last couple of years, we have an incredible increase in women joining the sculpture programme. So it's important that regardless then, everyone feels comfortable and safe within that environment. This then kind of leads me on to becoming an Iron Maiden. A couple of years ago, the Iron Maiden, I suppose, kind of collective then started years ago by Dilys Jackson, and I was asked to become an Iron Maiden a couple of years back. And it's something that it has such a kind of presence, and this idea of kind of strong, tough, resilient, which I think kind of goes alongside the process itself. So I feel it's quite an honour to be a part of something so unique then. And that's, you know, I think, you know, I kind of, sometimes I do refer to myself as an Iron Maiden. So yeah, I feel quite honoured and privileged to be a part of something that's very unique, but also very relevant then to kind of what we're trying to work with within this community. And that led me on to when I started back in 2017, these series of performance works that primarily were working collaboratively with women sculptors. And this started at SLOS in the National Cast Iron Conference. And then I was invited back 2 years later for the 2019 conference, which luckily I had then received Arts Council of Wales funding. So I was starting to kind of establish a series of works that then the Arts Council were happy to support, especially as they could see that I was bringing that knowledge back into Wales, but also into my teaching. So it kind of sat, my practice and my teaching kind of sat side by side, which was incredibly important then. And there's something quite beautiful about these images, just working with some women I knew, some I'd never met before, and just that beautiful collaboration that happened then between all of us. So I thought that was quite a special moment that we had all experienced, and it's something prior to that I'd never really considered, and it is something that I'm continuing to kind of develop then. And again, you know, referring back to this community and this idea of inclusivity, and you know, the Foundry Tree is a kind of celebration of that then. And I feel being in a position and handed something such as the head of sculpture at Carmarthen School of Art, by the late Andy Griffiths, it feels an incredible honour to be doing so. But also what comes with that is pressure and responsibility to maintain a standard that had been maintained for so long. And it feels incredibly kind of poignant then, I think, especially over the last 18 months, working through the pandemic. Within our department, we rely so much on a kind of community-based way of working. And what the pandemic did was almost take that away from us. And everything then relied on digital, different ways of communicating. So what we try and do in the department is still maintain that sense of community and friendships and building those relationships that starts from as soon as you step through the doors with us. And some of my students on the right-hand side there, we've started creating our own kind of foundry tree within our department. I started that 2 years ago, and obviously we've been added to the kind of original foundry tree kind of database then. So again, we're a part of something incredibly small, but also such vast in terms of knowledge and experience, and people happy to share that with one another then. So over the last 2 years, my kind of aim has been to just grow and develop the department as best I can, and obviously just maintaining the core focus and catalyst within our sculpture program is the iron program, and it's incredibly important that this can kind of be maintained throughout. And this is just a little taster that we did back in October around kind of Halloween time. It was just a small production pour, an introduction to first years. So there's quite a lot of students on the pour floor, and just exposing them to, casting and allowing them to, give different roles a go and just see how they feel and whether they're comfortable within that position. And I think, that idea of teamwork, and you could just, if I pop this on, you can just see a glimpse of the possibility then of what this material can do to a group of people. I think it's quite an extraordinary process to be a part of, and I think it's something that we are just continuing to grow at the school, and hopefully we'll be celebrating another 10 years, and hopefully it's something that we are continuing to grow and evolve, and having the opportunity such as this festival is just another bonus then, to be able to meet new people. Unfortunately, this year we're presenting this lecture and the performance virtually. However, I think it's still important that we're still able to build those connections within the community. So again, thank you very much for listening, and our social media accounts are on the screen, as well as my email address. So if you have any questions or would just like to chat about anything, please drop me an email, or you can contact me through the social media pages. Thank you very much.